Hello, everyone, and welcome to our round 2 of our final mock of the 2022 NFL Draft. We're just going to get right into it with the Jaguars on the clock. We have them taking Quay Walker.
So a lot went into this pick. We joked around saying it could be another receiver. We thought that it could be a tight end. But most likely with passing on Trayvon Walker, or Aiden Hutchinson, who seem to be the two consensus guys being talked at the 1 overall pick. We think it's defense here. And despite signing Fellaille Olakon, or however you say his name, we still think that they're missing an inside backer. And to some, it might be surprising not to see Nakobi Dean here, but in a division where you play Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry twice a year, you need this size-speed combination, and Dean isn't the fastest guy, and he's not the biggest guy, and Walker still has some developing to do, but I think overall is going to end up being a nice piece playing next to Olakon and behind Josh Allen in the front.
Yeah, we discussed this could be an edge here, but, I mean, a problem with us with the Jags taking an edge is they have Josh Allen and Clavon Chason. And, yes, Chason hasn't done much, but he's still a first-round pick and still on a rookie deal. So it's up to this new coaching staff to decide. And I would bet that they probably go edge later. Maybe take a athletic upside guy in, like, the 3rd or the 4th.
The thing, too, with Chason is that they've been running a 4-3 since he's gotten into the league. He's too small to be a pure end. This new 3-4 scheme should suit him a lot better than anything in the past.
Yeah. The Lions are at 34. We have them taking George Pickens. They have said that they want to get more vertical, and Pickens, in our eyes, has the talent to be a first-rounder. There have been recent reports about character concerns. I did see where he was suspended from a game a couple of years ago, but also this is just coming out now. They said there's worry about him buying into a program, but he also comes from Georgia, which seems to produce a lot of high character guys. So we're going to go ahead and assume that talent outweighs the concern there. And Dan Campbell seems like a guy that can get the most out of any player. And Pickens comes in and is a really good down the field threat. He's a decent route runner, and he's the best run blocking wide receiver. So I think this is a good fit. And I think Jack agrees there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Jets at 35, I feel like this is one of those picks that, unless he gets not reached on in the first, but if he's still there, this is another one that seems pretty certain, at least in our eyes. And they are taking Breece Hall. Yeah, for us, he's the best running back. He reminds me a lot of Le'Veon, but I think better. He's faster. He's more decisive. I always thought Le'Veon was a patient runner that was a little too patient. But Breece Hall is a do-it-all back. He's one of the very few in this draft that has elite upside as a pass catcher and a runner. And the Jets spent money on 2 tight ends that are both decent blockers as well as receivers. We have them drafting Charles Cross, and now Breece Hall is a reliable weapon out of the backfield and can take the pressure off of Wilson a little bit. And he's going to pair well. Michael Carter will be a nice 2 to Breece Hall. Or keep it moving with the Giants at 36. They pass on edge rusher in the first round twice, and they get a steal here with David Ojabo. If he hadn't torn his Achilles, I think his hype train would have gotten him maybe even to the top 15. I don't know that I saw him there because I think he's got more development, but it's still a very good pick. He was clearly a first-round talent to me. And the Jets get there. Martindale gets his edge rusher, and they don't overpay for the wrong guy. They wait. They take 2 other positions of need at greater value, and they still get a very good pick.
Yeah, Martindale's philosophy is cover first and find someone to hit the quarterback later, because obviously everyone wants to do that. You go out and get the best man corner in Sauce, and you get lucky here with 36, and you pick up Ojabo, who is in no rush to come back because the Giants sit as it is with a fairly decent rotation at the outside backer spot with Ojulari, Quincy Roche, and O'Shawn Ximenez.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out is I've seen the argument that the Giants go edge rusher because Martindale loves his edge rushers in Baltimore like Zadarius Smith and Matt Judon. one thing that needs to be noted, none of those guys are first rounders. Like that just seems like you can't, Martindale seems to be able to take day 2 guys and day 3 guys and turn them into productive pass rushers as he's doing here. Jason Owe was the first round pass rusher I can think of that they took as an outside backer.
I was going to say since T. Sizzle, I think.
Yeah, so to make the argument that Martindale likes his edge rushers, so he's going to take one in the first, is not valid because he seems to have an eye, assuming it was him, an eye for the value at edge, not the first rounders. The Texans are up next. We have them taking John Mechie. As we said over and over, they need help everywhere, and they're missing a dependable pass catcher that can play in the slot. I know Cooks is there. Cooks is heavily underrated. However, I think if you're playing Cooks in the slot, it's misusing his skill. I think he's an inside-outside receiver that is a field stretcher. And, maybe the Texans believe Nico Collins can also be a weapon, but Mechie gives you an underneath weapon that is insane after the catch. I comped him to a much slower Tyreek Hill because he plays with this chaotic style that reminds me of Hill, who just basically jumps around. And he's very slippery, and he doesn't have the speed to take the top off the defense, but he's a good route runner. He's got hands issues, in my opinion, but Houston takes a gamble here that it's not too bad, and they get a guy that can take a slant and make 4 people miss. The Jets are up next, and this is from the Sam Darnold trade, and we have them taking Andrew Booth.
So the Jets miss out on both top-tier corners at 10 after taking Cross at 4. And although I was not high on Booth, I think this is a really good value pick. Booth has a decent amount of developing to do, but has some pretty wicked athleticism and a highlight reel that I could watch over and over. The plays that he makes are kind of absurd, and I wish he had done all the tests, but due to injuries and various other things, he did not. But the Jets are clearly lacking help in the corner room. I mean, DJ Reed and Bryce Hall are fine corners, but Booth is just another man in to try to help stop the powerhouses in the AFC.
Well said. The Bears are finally picking at 39, and we had them taking Jahan Dotson from Penn State. I will go on record as saying I don't think he's a first-round talent. I think he does some things well. He's a decent, above-average route runner. His hands are very good, and he seems surprisingly good at a jump ball for a guy that's not that big. However, his speed in the combine is not the speed that shows up on tape. He doesn't, to me at least, run by a ton of people. I think it can be a dependable slot target. I would have concerns about having him on the outside at the pro level, but the Bears need help. They just need help. They have Darnell Mooney, who's a field stretcher, and they signed Byron Pringle, which could be an underrated signing, as is St. Brown, but they need a guy that Fields can truly depend on. And while I don't think Dotson is the first-round talent, as I said, I think he can be a very dependable slot receiver. The Detroit Lions are here at 40. We think this is part of the Seattle trade where they went up and got Kenny Pickett at 32. We have them taking first Trey McBride. For me, he's tight end 1, but in potential, he's tight end probably 2 for me. However, he is the best run blocker I saw from the tight end position, and he offers a lot as a receiver. I compared him to Dalton Schultz, who I think is heavily underrated, and Hawkinson has flashed, but he has been hurt all the time. And Detroit just keeps building. They get a guy that can be an asset, can be a safety blanket to pair along with Hawkinson, and he can be an elite blocker like Hawkinson is. So they run more, as Jack was talking about, 12 personnel, and it gives them more flexibility, a lot more play action with double tight ends that might suit Jared Goff's strengths. And yeah, so then at the next pick, we have them taking Nakobi Dean.
So Dean, he's falling because of size, and it's kind of unfortunate because he has like incredible instincts, and had a guy like his teammates Walker or Tyndall had his experience and his instincts, they're probably a top 10, top 15 pick. But Detroit, they have an okay room. They have Derek Barnes and Angelone, and I mean they're serviceable. But if you can go get Dean, I don't see why you don't do it. And the truth of the matter is that if you look at the Detroit defense, there's not like a very clear leader there. So I mean, Dean comes from a high energy coach in Kirby Smart. He goes to another one in Dan Campbell, and most likely becomes Campbell's leader on the defense.
I completely agree. I also think Dean is falling because he hasn't been the best in the pre-draft process. He didn't. I know he was hurt, but at the same time, when you're not able to do any of the testing, I feel like that.
I was gonna say he relied too much on his pro day, and it just didn't go as well as he probably hoped it had.
Right. So now we also have the Colts with their first pick of the draft from the Carson Wentz trade. We have them taking Christian Watson. We joked about this. How funny would it be if it was a quarterback? It's a joke. However, if Ritter and Corral are there, it's not the craziest. Just it would be a very Ballard move. But for now, they go get Christian Watson, who is desperately needed in that receiver room. We've been Carson Wentz backers, or at least not as hating on him as the media was, because there was just nothing. There was Michael Pittman, who can't separate and is probably more like a good slot, and the rest. So now they go get Christian Watson, who adds speed and size, which are missing both beyond Pittman's size. And I think he immediately becomes, in my eyes, the number one. I don't think the number one is Pittman. And Matt Ryan gets another weapon, because if you go in without another receiver, Matt Ryan, while he's shown the ability to do it, you're asking a lot for, I think you've 37?
I think he might even be older than that.
Yeah, that's asking a lot if you don't address the receiver with your first pick. And I think it'd be hilarious if they went quarterback. But for now, I'm going to assume that they make the smart pick, the smart play, and go with Christian Watson.
I know that or at least I think we've addressed this before, but we've talked about pushing a narrative with the draft prospects. However, there's also pushing narratives with players that are already in the league. And when you look at the Colts, it's, man, why can't Carson Wentz make this team win? They're built to win now. And the minute they trade for Matt Ryan, man, there's no weapons here. And the truth is, yes, there is no weapons here. But why is your story changing the minute Matt Ryan shows up? Is it because you hate Carson Wentz that much? The story needs to stay the same. It's either you have weapons or you don't.
Yeah, for sure. The Atlanta Falcons are now up at the 43rd pick, and we went back and forth on this, but we ultimately agreed if the quarterbacks are there, they probably go with them. We have them taking Matt Corral. I am not I've said over and over, I'm not the biggest fan of Corral. However, with the system that they're probably going to try and play with Mariota, I think Corral fits right into that. That was my comp for a while. Actually, for Corral was Mariota, although the NFL version, not the one coming out of college. And I think Atlanta needs a lot of help in a lot of different places, but this might be that situation where they just can't pass up the chance. Plus, the backup quarterback behind Mariota, who's known for being injured, is Felipe Franks. So do with that information what you might. But to me, Corral at this point is probably a pretty good pick, and banking on that he can fit into an RPO offense or a quick strike offense and operate it smoothly. Similar to my opinion, how this is not the same exact offense, but how Tannehill runs the Tennessee offense, where he flashes every once in a while and he has a decent amount of rushing yards, but he's never going to elevate them.
The only thing I want to note here is that in Atlanta, if Mariota gets hurt and Corral has to go in, they've bolstered up the running back room to the point where this is actually going to be run first, stick to the short game, and just pray that we don't got to go deep.
Yeah, I think he needs a little bit of development, but that's a good point. Corral, for me, is probably the third most day one ready if you had to use him. I think I would put Pickett as a day one starter if you need it, and I think Howell can start if you need it. I think Corral's right there. If you run an offense that's similar to what he ran in college, he can do it. I think you'll I think he'll flash, but then, I think it's just a smart pick for the Falcons, as much as I don't care for him as a prospect. The Browns are up next. We have them taking DeMarvin Leal, or I think it is Leal.
Yeah,
At least
Leal.
that's what the announcers in college were saying. To me, he is considered a defensive tackle by some. I think he's a little undersized for that as a full-time role, but I think he's a pretty good pass rusher, and he can play end and inside, and I think it's just another weapon that desperately needs to be added next to Myles Garrett. There's no other way to go about it. You got Watson. Congratulations. You're going to have to face the heat of that, as we've gone over this before, but now you really need to add a defensive piece on the line because the back end and the secondary is pretty good. The Ravens are up next, and we have them taking Jalen Petre.
So I have a day 3 grade on Petre, and I get that not many people agree with me on that. The tape that I watched, I was unimpressed. He doesn't play safety a whole lot. He's definitely more of a nickel, and if we had a little bit more time, I probably would have broken down the defensive pieces into like further categories. But as it sits, he was categorized as a safety for me, and he's got the size to probably be more of like a sub linebacker or whatever. He just does not tackle well. He's impatient. In the Oklahoma State game, they ran speed option, and he bit on the quarterback nearly every time, fake pitches, and it just seems like there's a whole lot of developing that needs to happen there. However, I think even with the departure of Martindale, I think Baltimore is going to want to run the same type of defense, this very physical man defense, and they got rid of Tavon Young. So they are missing a nickel, and I think Petre will most likely fill in that spot on day 1, and he'll just have to learn from guys like Peters and Humphrey and all their guys in the back end, Marcus Williams. But if the Ravens want to keep just sending the house and giving different looks, I think Petre can do that really well for them.
Yeah, no one teaches you how to tackle like Marcus Peters. The Vikings are up next. We have them taking Bernard Raymond.
So Raymond is a prospect that I think could go late day 1. It's hard to tell with him because he's only been playing football since like 14, but he's only been an offensive tackle for 2 years. From what I saw on tape, he seems like a pretty balanced run to pass blocker. He seems more on the athletic end, which is why I think he could sneak his way into the first. Some of his Senior Bowl tape, whether it's practice or game, looked like he could get a little bit overpowered. So there's belief that he could get moved to guard, and I can understand why. And Minnesota's tackles are pretty much set with Darisaw from last year and Brian O'Neill. So I think Raymond will probably slip in to guard and at least go compete. I mean, he's only had 2 years of tackle, so what's the harm in starting over at guard? But moving down the line, the next pick is the Commanders. This was the pick switch with the Colts, I believe, for the Wentz trade. We have them taking Cole Strange, the guard at Tennessee Chattanooga. And Strange was one of the day 2 prospects that I heard a lot about. He tested pretty well at the combine, and much like all hype, I have to check it out for myself because I can't believe a damn thing that these NFL Network idiots talk about. But I actually was very impressed by Cole Strange. I think he's got kind of like a thin frame. Like he's kind of built like in an unconventional way to play guard, but it really didn't impact his tape at all. Strong run blocker, strong pass blocker. Probably he's not the strongest or the fastest guy, but he's going to get the job done. And right now for Washington, I mean, it sounds like they were the only ones in on Carson Wentz. So you got to prove that you were right in going out and getting him. And the overlying theme again here is keep him off his back. Um, moving down the line, we have a lineman run here. We have Chicago going with Minnesota tackle Daniel Fellaille. I don't know how to say his name. Much like Salyer, I thought that Fellaille could have been a day one pick. I think that his lack of athleticism is in part why he's not a day one for most people. I thought he was a late day one prospect when the offseason started. Not quite sure what happened there. But he's ready to play. He's huge. He's massive. And Minnesota let him run in a touchdown. So hopefully Eberflus lets him do that this year. That would be fun to watch. And here is the O-line running still. We have the Saints taking Abraham Lucas out of Washington State. I've heard whispers about Lucas, and again, I had to check it out. He's okay. I have him as a late day one grade, part because he does look good, like really good at times, but there is an inconsistency in his tape. He's a strong run blocker. He has a nice combo of speed and strength. He's good at getting out in front of screens and stuff like that. The problem is that in pass blocking overall, there is an inconsistency as to how he looks. But I think it's a good value here at 49 for the Saints, and he'll at the very least go in and compete with James Hurst for the left tackle spot left by Terran Armstead. And I'm going to take a rest, and Zach, you're up.
The Chiefs are up at pick 50, and this is, in our eyes, a luxury pick. And we have them taking Jelani Woods. And I think this will be a pick where people just, I don't want to say gasp, but I'll be like, oh boy, here we go. Woods is, I mean, if Jordan Davis is a unicorn, Woods is the unicorn in my eyes. I think when you look at how Kyle Pitts was treated last year, Woods is bigger, he's heavier, he's faster. Or no, I don't think he might not be as fast, but he had equal jumps, or even better, I think. And just athletically, he seemed to even have a better profile, or at least an equal profile to Pitts, while being much heavier and being taller. Now, he has some development to do. He's only been playing the position for a couple of years. He went to Virginia as a quarterback. But, I mean, you look at the tape and the stats, it's not like he had 5 catches last year. He had, I think, 700 receiving yards. It's not like he was a non-factor. He needs to work on his blocking technique. He's a strong blocker. He's a willing blocker, but he's got to learn how to block for his size. And who better to learn that from than Travis Kelce? Who better to learn the nuances of tight end than Travis Kelce? The Chiefs have never had a good number 2 tight end, despite like teasing that they might want to feature one more, because there's random seasons by guys that just don't do anything ever, but they always pop up here and there with decent touchdown numbers and decent yardages. But now they actually get a certified mammoth at the position who's bigger, faster, stronger theoretically than Travis Kelce. And it's just another element. You replace, as we've talked about the Moneyball way, you replace Tyreek Hill's production in different ways. You go out and get nice pieces on nice deals with Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster, and you still have Mecole Hardman. And now you have a tight end duo that should be unstoppable. Also, I want to add, I think there's a sneaky chance that Woods could be a first-rounder for a team that's just banking on complete upside. I mean, if you're going to take Trayvon Walker in the first, I don't know why Jelani Woods doesn't get taken in the first, but that's just a bold prediction. We didn't see it happening in this mock.
Well, we did talk about it. It's Cincinnati at 31. There was a debate there. I mean, that's pretty much a luxury pick. They fixed the O-line, and, I mean, corner's an issue, but if you really don't believe in Elam as the guy there, I don't see why you wouldn't take the upside to add to that receiver core.
Yeah, because then you'd have Jelani Woods, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. And Joe Mixon and a new offensive line. And a new offensive line. That would just be insane. But if they don't go here, we think that he doesn't get past the Chiefs, who, like we said, this is just a luxury pick at this point. And I don't think that the receiver is as big of a need as it once was. I think they've done a really good job of patching that up and making a good starting 3, and they have the freedom to go whatever they want here. The Panthers, they got this pick with our projected trade with the Eagles when they went up and got Stingley, and we have them taking Christian Harris.
So, flashing way back to our mock 1.0, or even the unofficial mock of the season, we had Carolina at 6 taking Devin Lloyd. Clearly not the case anymore. However, especially with the recent arrest of Damian Wilson for sexual assault or whatever it was, the Panthers need a linebacker, and Corey Littleton isn't the name he once was, and Shaq Thompson is.
He's pretty good, but he's
probably,
not a middle. I think he plays more of the outside.
Yeah, but Harris gives the Panthers some flexibility to move the backers around and give different looks. And as a Georgia fan, I hate Christian Harris. He tormented Stetson Bennett twice this year, but watching him on tape is really fun. I think that when he drops into coverage, it's a little bit chaotic at times. He can bump into his own teammates and just kind of get lost in the mess. But as in the box, run stuffing and blitzing, stuff like that, he's probably exactly what the Panthers are looking for. And you add a little bit of speed to that room that lacks real speed pretty much since Kuechly and Thomas Davis have retired. Moving down the line here, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Zion Johnson. This is probably a very unpopular opinion of mine, but I do technically have a late first grade on Zion Johnson. I just wasn't all that impressed with him as a pass blocker. I think that he's a real, probably, if it's on run blocking alone, he might be my number one interior offensive lineman. But I think that his lack of being ready to pass block now is going to drop him a little bit. But this is another example of a guy that's kind of falling just due to the bigger needs of other teams. But the Steelers get a steal here. They had a makeshift offensive line last year with a bunch of mid-round guys like Kevin Dotson and Dan Moore. So they finally get, a name to put on that offensive line with recent signings, Mason Cole and James Daniels, and hopefully he can help keep Trubisky off his back and create bigger holes for Najee Harris.
All right. So this is our probably one of our other bold predictions here. And if this is if the board falls this way. The Green Bay Packers select Desmond Ritter, quarterback, Cincinnati. Again, we have already had them trade Jordan Love to the Giants, and they've gotten their receiver in Garrett Wilson. And so now we're looking at their team, and they could probably use another receiver, but I still think that they don't. They do that on the third round. I think they do a first and third rounder. And their defense is pretty set. Their corners are good. Their safeties are good, barring injury. Their linebackers are fine. Chris Barnes is a good starter and a gem that they found. And for the most part, the Packers seem really good at finding these guys off the street. I mean, look at Devontae Campbell and Rizal Douglas last year. I mean, they were afterthoughts at the time. And yet they ended up being very meaningful and getting extensions. And their tight end room is probably set for now with Robert Tonyan and Josiah DeGuara. I guess they could still go tight end if they don't love either one of them. Now, their backup behind Rodgers is almost non-existent if Love is traded. And just because Rodgers signed this mega deal doesn't mean he's going to play out the whole thing. So we think if the board falls this way, and Ritter, in our eyes, is, for me, is a second rounder, even a third round talent, because I think he's just so far away. But they go get a physical product, a physical specimen with decent athleticism, a strong arm, and leadership qualities, and let him sit and learn. They go back to this again in the second round, what they did with Jordan Love. And I think it's going to be hilarious, but it also, at this point, is not a bad pick to me. So it'll be joked, it'll be mocked. If it happens, again, this is a bold prediction. But if he does fall, this is fine. I think this should be considered a fine pick. Do you want to?
So to Zach's point, behind Jordan Love, under the assumption that we are right and he gets moved to New York, their backups are Kurt Benkert and Danny Etling. So
Didn't
great
even know.
situation to be in.
I didn't know Etling was back at quarterback.
Yeah, I guess so. But Ritter is a guy that could definitely use time to develop. And like Zach said, there's no saying Rodgers plays out this whole contract. If he does, Ritter will probably just be the next Jordan Love who sits for 4 years. But to me, it's not a bad pick because Rodgers has that like sneaky athleticism, and I think that if you're gonna learn from someone in terms of Ritter alone, it's probably Rodgers.
Yeah, and just for the record, even if Ritter's not here, I still think they could take a day 2 quarterback either in the second or the third. Whether it's Carson Strong, I don't think Zappy makes as much sense, but I don't really like Carson Strong either. But I think they need a backup, and they didn't address it in free agency unless they want to just go if they trade Jordan Love and go sign someone off the street. But they could sign Josh Rosen. That'd be funny. But yeah, so we're gonna keep rolling with the Patriots up now. We have them taking Darian Beavers.
Beavers is a prospect that probably raised his stock a little bit due to the combine. I know that there's not a whole ton of people as high on him as I am. I have, I believe, a late first grade on him, early second. I just thought his tape was really impressive. I think that for a guy who's not your stereotypical linebacker size for this day and age, he covers pretty well. And I think the thing I liked about him most was just how smart he played. Like, if he's covering a running back out of the backfield, he'll leave cushion because he knows he's going to come up and make the tackle. Like, he's not going to just let someone burn him. Like, he knows that he's not the fastest guy on the field. But I think that New England passes on their choice of Lloyd and Dean and a bunch of those are the two we've had mocked to New England at some point during our mocks. And I think they go out and with Christian Harris off the board, I think they go get what I consider their Dante Hightower replacement. Beavers played outside backer. He played inside backer. I think he has good enough coverage skills to survive in the league. But in New England system, I think that Patricia and I don't know if Judge is working with the defensive side, but Belichick will find a place for him. It's most likely going to be early downs, rushing the passer, playing the run. He's like 6'4" to like 30. And it was just fun just not watching a guard absolutely demolish a linebacker. This dude put some guards on their backs. So that's always a nice quality to have in your linebackers.
We have the Cardinals taking a much needed defensive line player in Logan Hall. I know that some people have, I think, even first round grades on him, and D'Angelo Hall, of all people, who knows why, but he was throwing around ridiculous names with Logan Hall. I think Hall is fine. I think he does have some pass rushing upside. I think he has decent in the run. I just don't know how much upside he has. However, the Cardinals' defensive line is either injury prone, unproven, or old. And they need more bodies. And they already addressed the receivers, so I think Logan Hall makes perfect sense. And do you want to?
We're good.
All right. So the Cowboys are up next, and we have them taking yet another pick that's not a true need in Lewis Sign.
So Dallas did re-sign both Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse, and Donovan Wilson was not re-signed. He's still on his rookie deal, I found out. I looked it up later. However, there's no alpha in that room. Kearse had a good season. Donovan Wilson had a good season, but it could clearly use an upgrade. And I think they go after Lewis Sign over Brisker. I wasn't impressed with Brisker's tape as compared to Signs. For a guy that's considered a hard hitter, kind of a box safety, Sign was able to play the deep third, the deep half, pretty much whatever you asked him to do. He was solid against tight ends. I think that sign might remind Dan Quinn a little bit of a Keanu Neal in a little bit of a more athletic way. And I think that he easily overthrows one of these guys for a starting spot for Dallas.
I agree. And as we've said, Dallas never goes for need, they go for want. And I could see Jerry Jones jumping all over this if Sign is still there. The Bills, we have going with Kenneth Walker out of Michigan State. I have him compared to Shady McCoy. I think he's very good with the ball in his hands. I think he bounces around in a similar fashion. And I think he has pass catching ability along with his rushing. I think he's got a lot of potential. I have him as my running back too. I think Breece Hall is just a little bit better. But Buffalo needs an alpha. We talk about alphas. They don't have that in their running back room. Zach Moss has not worked out. And Singletary flashed, but he still didn't flash enough for us that Buffalo passes. I know they're a sleeper pick to take a first-round running back. I don't think so. I think that'd be a mistake. But they wait here and they get the second-best running back in the draft, the guy that can take the early work, that can take the pass catching if you wanted to, and just as another body to add to the mix after they already addressed their secondary.
For this pick, I think it's the people that are saying that Buffalo takes a first-round running back clearly didn't watch the playoffs last year. They didn't lose because they didn't have an offense. They lost because their secondary was Swiss cheese. So we had them addressing the actual need on the team. And pretty much after that, like this pick, starting with this pick, it's a luxury pick. Go for what you want. Make the team better. And Buffalo missed out on McKissick because he wanted to return to Washington with all the drama. I don't know why you want to do that. But Walker will make a nice pairing with Singletary as a runner, and will probably split passing snaps with Duke Johnson. I mean, it's weird to say Duke Johnson because he was never like the biggest name, but he knew his role in the league. And I just think that Allen's been missing a legit pass catcher out the backfield, someone that he can check down to and not just try to force a throw down the field.
And another fun fact for us, Buffalo's last 1,000-yard rusher was Shady McCoy. So they get a younger version of him in Kenneth Walker. The Falcons are up next, and this is from the Titans, which I assume was with the Julio Jones trade.
I believe so, yeah.
And we have them taking Jaquan Brisker.
Well, I don't think that Brisker falls out of the second, so here we go. Atlanta is, as we've stated multiple times, an absolute mess with holes everywhere. They address receiver, and I think they probably do that again at some point, but they need help in the back end. I'm not a fan of A.J. Terrell, but he did have a good season last year. They could take a corner like McCreary here to pair with him. I just think that Brisker is the value. When ESPN has your starters listed as Dean Marlowe and Eric Harris, I'm pretty sure about 90% of football fans, if you told them who that was, would not know. And they still have Richie Grant from last year, so hopefully he's developed, and Atlanta could have a nice young safety tandem in Brisker and Grant heading into the year.
Yeah, the Falcons need help everywhere, so I think they just go best player available after maybe pushing the quarterback earlier with Corral. The Packers at 59, we have taking Josh Paschal, I think is how you say it, from Kentucky. He is one of the defensive linemen. I think that is a true end, not an edge rusher. I know he might be listed as one. However, when you watch him on tape, he's, I think, 6'3" and 280, and it's like 280 pounds of muscle. He's very strong, and I think he's got good athleticism, but it would be better served with his hand in the dirt versus standing up. Plus, the Packers have their outside back edge rushers in Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. And, if one of them got hurt, I guess you could stand up Paschal, but he shows a lot, like I said, a lot of strength. I think he could be an edge setter at the end position in the run game. And I think his hands get out of place, and I think he's a little too extended and a little off balance. But if he learns all that stuff, he could be a steal in the second round as a guy that just overpowers tackles. The Buccaneers at 60, we have taken Cade Otton this is another one that's a truly luxury pick. But as of right now, Gronk has not returned, and they just don't have. I mean, I know Kevin Brate, I think, is still there, but OJ Howard's no longer there. And I think Otten is a guy that didn't have a ton of production last year or any year. I think he had like 30 catches, but he looks like a very smooth athlete, pretty good hands, and a good blocker. And I think this is, you know, a pick that makes a lot of sense. And I think he can start right away if Gronk decides not to come back. San Fran is up, and we have them taking Dylan Parham.
So Parham is another prospect like Strange who seems to be gaining a little bit of momentum down the stretch here. This was kind of a quick scout I did in the middle of the second round. But from what I watched, strong tape, he was actually really fun to watch. He's massive, but like he moves pretty nimbly for someone of his size. Has no problem getting out in front of plays. Always has his head on the swivel in pass pro. So for a team that just lost their Pro Bowl guard, Laken Tomlinson, Dylan Parham should come in right away and make a difference for Trey Lance, who it sounds like is going to be the starter heading into next year. Moving down the line, Kansas City, we have them taking Tariq Woolen out of UTSA. Woolen may be the biggest riser of this class from the combine at 6'4", 205. He ran a 4.26, right?
That's something crazy for his size.
And he jumped like a 42-inch vert, which tied with Channing Tindall for the best vert of the combine. The Chiefs, as we noted in the last episode, are lacking serious corner help. They take Dax in the first, but that's more of a nickel / mix up the front type pick. Woolen, watching him on tape, I don't even think he was a full-time starter for UTSA. When he wasn't, his eyes were just in zone, were glued way too hard to the quarterback and just didn't have the awareness to know where his zone was. From a play aspect, he does have a ton of development to do, but Zach actually helped me with the comp on this one. We comped him to Obi Melifonwu on the basis that he rose from the combine, and I think that he's a guy that could actually make a switch to safety. Either way, you bring in positional flexibility in the back end with Dax Hill and Woolen, and the Chiefs will figure it out. Someone between Woolen and Dax, they'll fill some holes in the back end that'll hopefully, hold up against the likes of Herbert and Derek Carr and Russell Wilson and everyone else in the AFC.
Bengals are up now, and we have them taking Wan'Dale Robinson from Kentucky. Again, we can't say enough that some of these are super luxury picks, and Wan'Dale comes in and adds a new dimension to the wide receiver room that isn't there. He's basically a joystick. My comp for him is Rondale Moore, and he can be used out of the backfield. He can be used on bubble screens, on quick screens, and it just allows you to maybe change the offense up a little bit, run more 4 wide receiver sets, and I think this is just something where the rich get richer at the wide receiver position for the Bengals. And then finishing off our round 2, we have the Denver Broncos taking Nick Bonito. I think Bonito is an early round 2 talent, fringe round 1. I think he shows a lot. My only issue with him is he has pure speed rusher. He has no power that I saw, but he has natural counter moves where he spins back into the play. And Denver can pair him with Bradley Chubb, who is a decent power rusher and learned, I assume, things from Von Miller, so Bonito can learn from Chubb, and they get a nice pass rushing pairing.
Right now, we're going to go through some of the prospects that we have profiles on, not necessarily the guys we quick scouted. I mean, but I'm just going to start off because I only have a couple. Tyler Schmidt.
These are guys that we think are steals or pretty good value in the 3rd round and later.
Mm-hmm. So the first from me would be Tyler Schmidt out of Tulsa. This is a guy that's being talked about as a 2nd rounder and even fringe first. And when I watch his tape, I didn't think that he looked bad. I think that technically he has a lot to work on. And if he could sit a year, I think that's the best case scenario for him. So third round would be like a really high value pick for a team who goes up or goes and gets him. Zach Tom out of Wake Forest, same thing. The only thing to add about him is that he is like 290 pounds and was playing tackle. So most likely he'll kick inside to guard or center because it sounds like he's got 5-spot positional flexibility. And I mean, I really liked him. I think that he could be the project lineman of this class that turns out to be one of the best from this class. Chad Mumma, the linebacker from Wyoming, was not impressed with his tape. Was not impressed at all. I think that he'll probably be better suited as a 3-4 outside linebacker. He had some nice he showed nice power in his game, so maybe an edge rusher, a run stuffer on early downs, but has some development to do. McCreary, he was my cornerback 5 for a while. It's hard to judge him because I don't know what his ceiling is athletically. And as a starter, I think he can do it, but I still think that there's like technically a lot wrong with him. Like just watching the Alabama game alone, I get it's Alabama, but like they exposed him in like 5 different ways, and it's hard. Marcus Jones, the Houston corner, he's 5'8". That's the biggest problem here. I comped him to Logan Ryan. He's a really good tackler, plays to the whistle, could be a 3rd, 4th. He just had double shoulder surgery. So that sounds like a lot of fun. Safeties, Nolan Turner, Brian Cook, Nick Cross, all really good prospects. Turner, ready to play, probably not a high ceiling. Cook, could play if you asked him to, but probably the highest upside of the safeties. Nick Cross, that was kind of a quick scout, but I liked what I saw. And the final one is Damon Clark. I have him as a first round, maybe like super early, 2nd graded linebacker. However, he just went for spinal fusion surgery or something crazy like that. He's expected to miss the whole first season. I believe that he is what people think that Devin Lloyd is right now. He is a really good box player. He can drop, really athletic for a guy that's 6'2", I think he was like 225. I think that his issue is that he needs to play with a little more power. For a guy that size, he can clearly defeat blockers in the box, and you would think that he's 5'11", 180 playing in the box. So hopefully he recovers, and he's definitely going to fall probably to day 3 due to this surgery and the unknowns around it. But if he comes back healthy, he could be the steal of the linebacker class.
All right, so on my side at the running backs, I have Rachaad White as my 3rd running back, and I think he's probably a 3rd rounder. He's got a nice blend of power and elusiveness, and he's a very good pass catcher. Isaiah Spiller, I also have as a day 2 pick. I think he does everything well. I don't think he excels at any one thing. I comped him to David Montgomery, a fine running back, a 3rd rounder. I think Montgomery was, and I think that's where Spiller will go. And he has the potential to be an every down running back, although I don't think he's going to be, a top 3 running back ever in the league. Most of my other running backs, James Cook, a lot of people are in love with. I love his receiving potential out of the backfield, and I think he has a home run potential as a running back, but he just gets taken down way too easy, and he just doesn't have a natural feel for the position to be taken. I mean, he might be a 3rd rounder, but I think he's more likely a 4th rounder that has a James White type role. And my sleeper is Ely from Ole Miss. I think he can do everything. I think he's going to be a day 3 pick. And I also think one more sleeper, depending on where it goes, is Kyron Williams For the receivers that are left, I think Velus Jones is going to be a massive steal if he goes in the third round or later. He reminds me of Brandon Cooks. He's got speed. He's got decent ability after the catch. He was one of the best I think he was the best punt returner in college football and a top 15 kick returner. David Bell is an elite route runner whose 40 time is going to sink him a little bit, but I think his route running and hands are so good that he still has value. Kyle Phillips is this year's slot receiver that's going to fall. And whether he's Hunter Renfrow or Braxton Berrios for me depends on where he's going. Alec Pierce, I didn't love. I thought he has potential as a downfield threat, but in short range, he's a very long strider. His arms flail a little bit when he's running. I just don't see him as much of a heavy target guy. I think NFL Network I saw compared him to Donovan Peoples-Jones, and that type of, I don't know that the similar play styles, but the kind of role he's had with Cleveland makes sense. Let me see. For tight ends, Greg Dulcich was Bucky Brooks' love at the combine, and I think he's a fine prospect. I think he can do it all, but I think he's an average prospect. Nothing he does is ultra special. Charlie Kolar is a decent receiver. He's a pretty good route runner. He didn't do a ton of blocking that I saw. And Isaiah Likely is a pass catcher only at the moment, and I think in the right system, he has value, but I don't know that he is more than a late third rounder. At the edge position, Boye Mafe, I think, has a lot as a speed rusher. I think him or Benito are interchangeable in who goes first, but I think they both do similar things. I think Benito's got a little bit more natural counter moves, and I was not a huge fan of Arnold Ebiketie, and I thought people are talking about him as a first-round prospect. I didn't see it. I thought he looked like a decent athlete, but very far from being a finished product. And I just think other players will get taken over him. And I believe that's all of my guys. I don't know if I mentioned quarterbacks. Bailey Zappi, I think, gets taken in the third round. He throws with a lot of anticipation. I don't like Carson Strong at all. I think he's got a good arm, but that's about it. On top of the knee injury, I wouldn't be going near him. But yeah, this is our guys that could easily be taken, and just the board didn't fall that way. And some of those could be massive steals, and some of those are a little overrated.
And just in terms of our draft coverage, we will be releasing a draft day grades after round one, and we will be posting TikToks about the prospects and the picks and surprises and all sorts of stuff like that. So just stay tuned for our content.